You know, when you're identifying talent, you're working with them and they're developing, how much of value do you place on analytics? Obviously, that's a pretty hot topic in the NBA. Do you go with your instincts, with what your gut tells you? You've been around the game for 50 years, or are you starting to buy into this trend of analytics?
Well, I was one of the first to be involved with analytics. I've spoken at MIT. I wrote in 1970, and you mentioned I do books. In my first book on basketball, I wrote how we evaluated things on possession being worth 1 point. In the last 15 years, the analytics people have found out it's worth 1.3 or 4, but that's with the 3-point line. So we were the first in Milwaukee to utilize the Heron reports, the Bellotti reports. I was the first to hire a guy that named Jordan Cohn, who developed the program that has ultimately come known as and as a follow-up and a synergy and so forth. So I've always been in analytics, but I use analytics as a tool, not the tool. You have to have basketball experience and know-how as you evaluate players and game situations. You have to understand what makes things work offensively and defensively. And they still are behind on analytics relative to defense because it's hard to put analytics on decision making, and that's where the film work and the coach really has to work with the players to look at games and say, now here was the situation, here's the pass you made, look what could have happened if you had made this pass, or you could have gone all the way, or you should have pulled up earlier. This type of thing, decision making, is vital to really success at its highest in the game, and that's something that comes from experience and from film work.
You know, we talk about analytics. I want to back up just a moment. We were talking about the Texas Legends. First year for one of your former players, Nick Van Exel. Just your thoughts on the job that he is doing so far.
Well, he's doing a great job. I've watched him practice, and he has command of the practice, has the respect of the players. We have a nice young team that they're all new. We don't have any players from last year, so this is a lot different. This is the toughest coaching there is. I've coached junior high, high school, small college, major college, ABA, NBA, FIBA ball around the world with 5 different national teams and the D-League. I was the oldest NBA affiliated head coach of a team when I was 74, coaching our legends. And I can tell you, out of all those, the D-League is the hardest to coach because you get a new team, there's no carryover. You basically get a new team every year. And then when you get them going pretty well, adios, coach, I just got called up. And but it's fun, you know, but it is tough. And but Nick's doing a good job, and we're happy to have him. And you know, I had him for 4 years at the Lakers, and sometimes tumultuous times with him, but really those were so minimal, and we won so many games. We averaged 56 or 7 wins. So we couldn't have had a bad relationship. And when I was assistant here, they asked, would it be good if we traded for Nick, who was at Denver at the time? Would he help us or hurt us? And Nellie and Mark Cuban said, it's up to you. If you think he'll help us, we'll do it. If you think he'll hurt us, we won't, because we had a good team. I said, he'll help us. He came, and he did. And we've had a very close friendship ever since. We're really happy to have him.
Well, you mentioned talking about the Dallas Mavericks, Donnie Nelson, Mark Cuban. That's a team that's not had a lot of continuity over the past few years. This was another revamped roster with 8 new players, 3 new starters in Deron Williams, Wesley Matthews, and Zaza Pachulia, but they have certainly exceeded expectations. What have been your takeaways?
Well, they're doing a good job. Unfortunately, they're handicapped by not having as healthy a team as they really need, even though the players are playing, whether Parsons or Matthews or Williams, they're playing, but they're not 100%. And Parsons is still limited on minutes, but they're with Dirk just being an incredible Dirk that he is. He's helping hold them together, and they're getting some good help from veterans like Harris and some of the other guys that are coming in and doing a good job. And Zaza's holding them together well.
What do you have, 21 rebounds the other night? I mean, he's been a double-double machine and has really been a pleasant surprise for Rick Carlisle's system.
Well, he's been underrated. He played for my son, Larry, who was general manager of the Bucks at the time, and he played well for Larry, and then Atlanta offered him an amount of money that the owner did not want to pay Zaza, and they had to let him go to Atlanta. And Atlanta, he got buried. He just behind a really good player, Al Horford, but he just didn't get the minutes. Here he's getting the opportunity and the minutes, and he's really making the most of them.
Well, a guy that's getting a lot of minutes too, or starting to come back on board, is JaVale McGee. What's your impressions of him and what he's going to be able to do under the tutelage of Coach Carlisle?
Well, he's going to have to get his mind and attitude straight. He's always had the talent, but he's been self-destructive, and he's, you know, at some point there has to be an epiphany of all the things that it takes for him to maximize his talent. He comes from good bloodlines. His mother was a WNBA player, and he has the talent to really contribute to a solid NBA team, but we'll see if he can turn his career around.
Of course, the name that is synonymous with the Dallas Mavericks is Dirk Nowitzki, and let's brag on him because we were obviously talking about Kobe in the open of our interview tonight, but he is such a beloved NBA superstar. His 18th season in the NBA, and his percentages that he's shooting over 50%. I mean, it's just been absolutely incredible. What has been the key for his longevity in the NBA?
A number of things. One would be the work ethic to begin with, that he's always kept himself in good shape. But I think more than anything, long about, I don't know, 2004 or 5, along in there, I can't remember the exact year, but I remember the moment that he made a decision about nutrition and about how he was going to take care of his body. You know, coming from Germany, you know, he was into brew, and he and Steve were he and Steve were known to stay out late at night from time to time and that sort of thing early on in the years, and they could do that, you know. But there came a time Dirk realized that if he were going to have the best of his career and extend his career, he would do the things that it would take. And he did that. And he's been very disciplined as a person with his working out, with his intake of food and beverage. And so I really think that has contributed as much as his work ethic.
You know, we talk about Dirk, but we also have to highlight the dynamic owner in Mark Cuban. And it's interesting because a little bit later tonight, we're going to talk about your book that you released, On Point. And, you know, you mentioned in the book that he is the most successful NBA owner that is hands-on. Would you mind just quantifying what he has meant to the NBA and just some of those leadership skills that we can take away from a winner?
Well, I don't think we have time to go into all of these things that he's done, but let's just say that he's kind of become the pattern for the new owner. He was the first, and there are so many young rather instantly wealthy individuals through selling their companies and such, usually internet related or communications related, and they're trying to copy his style. But what they are missing in a lot of cases is that they don't study the game like Mark. Mark knows the players, he knows the game, he still allows the coach to coach, though. He doesn't interfere with the coaching. He used to like to come into our huddles, and Nellie didn't like that, and that ultimately changed and such.
Really?
But he allows the coach to coach, whether it was Nellie. He never told Nellie who to play, not to play. He didn't do that with Avery, and I'm sure he doesn't do that with Rick. He's very supportive of the coaches until the time comes when the coach is gone. But really, Nellie and Avery, to an extent, forced his hand in certain ways. Long story. They're both great coaches, but Rick has found a way to, work with Mark where they have a good synergy, but he doesn't try to interfere with the basketball element really, other than with deals. I mean, he's the guy that's got to decide on the money, that sort of thing, but that's just business.
Well, he's very supportive of his coaches, but also one of the things, he's very passionate as an owner, and he truly loves his players. I think back to when they were on the road, they played the Boston Celtics, and Mark, at the end of that game, went out to half court, met his point guard, Darren Williams, and wrapped his arms around him and gave him a big hug. I mean, but he also is smart enough to realize to insulate himself where he doesn't become so emotionally attached when he's got to make a deal and break ways cut ways that he's going to do it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But as a player, you appreciate that, just that support.
Well, you do as a player, you certainly do. As a coach, here's what can happen, and he's avoided this, and that is, you love him as a coach and as an owner, but you don't become just a fan. Now, when an owner becomes a fan, then he won't make the correct decision when it comes time to trade or to decide the salary level at which he's going to go for this player. A fan will go ahead and, just keep him too long and maybe overpay and that sort of thing when it doesn't make sense. Sometimes it makes sense to overpay. But Mark is able to separate, and yet they know when it's over that he still cares about him. And he even though, take a guy like Michael Finley, he had to let Michael Finley go, but Michael Finley works for the Mavericks right now. He let Eddie Nahara go. Eddie Nahara is a part of the Mavericks family still. On and on and on. He is a loyal guy, and he does care, and I think caring, as you've read my book, that's pretty good. But that is one point of the 4 points on Better Life Teams, which is the essence of On Point. Number two, once you've determined your mission, your goals, your passion for what it is you're doing, you have to let the people on your life teams know that you care. And if that doesn't happen, or if a moment comes when they think you don't care, that in basketball you're just an X and an O or a power forward, you lose them. And caring it's so hard to get back if they don't think you care. They lose trust.